Ju placed a child before me. He was the orphan of his first love who died in battle. He left me with an ultimatum, raise Yao's orphan or divorce. Choose one. I looked at him and calmly chose divorce. I choose divorce. He thought I was just throwing a tantrum, waiting for me to regret it. On the third day, I abandoned our 3-month-old flesh and blood, and quietly left the capital. Later, word spread that the powerful commander never remarried, and had no more children. When Ju placed that child before me, the snow outside was falling heavily. The child was wrapped in thick silk swaddling, showing only a small face, pale and blue from the cold. On his body, he still carried the lingering chill and the scent of blood. Yunyao is dead, he spoke. His voice was cold, like he was stating something that had nothing to do with him. But I knew. His heart had followed that woman named Yunyao, and died with her. I looked away from the child's face, and looked at his handsome but cold expression. He was travel-worn. The ice and snow on his armor had not yet melted. He must have just come from the battlefield, and stepped directly into my courtyard. This is her child, he added. I didn't answer. I just gazed at him silently. We had been married for 3 years. He always treated me with polite respect. But his heart was always as cold as stone. I knew there was someone else in his heart. The woman who stayed by him since his humble beginnings, all the way to the peak of power. Unfortunately, she was ill-fated. 3 years ago, she fell ill, and passed away. Now I realize I was wrong. Not only was she not dead, but she had even borne him a child. And now, she was truly dead. Dead in the chaos of war. Ju looked at me. There was not a shred of the warmth that a husband should have. Only a cold, undeniable command. Her name is Nyao. Nyao, longing for Yunyao. Such deep affection. What a beautiful name. My heart felt like ice. But I showed no trace of disdain on my face. I only asked quietly, so? My calmness seemed to provoke him. He furrowed his brows. From today on, she is the eldest legitimate daughter of the commander's manor. She will be raised under your name. I looked at the child. The swaddle was embroidered with exquisite lotus patterns. And if I'm unwilling? The atmosphere turned cold instantly. Ju stared at me, as if he were seeing me for the first time. For 3 years, I had played the role of a submissive, sensible commander's wife, managing the household for him, respecting the elders, handling social obligations. Everyone said I was his virtuous helper. But only I knew. I was nothing more than a decoration, used for appearances. You have no choice. His voice dropped in temperature. Either raise Nyao well, and you remain the commander's wife. He paused. Every word was like an icicle piercing my heart. Or we divorce. He looked down at me, certain that I would choose the former. After all, I had no one to rely on. Except for the title of commander's wife. I had nothing. And our son, Qin Shiheng, was only 3 months old. Any normal mother would endure for the sake of her child. I looked at him and suddenly laughed. Fine. I choose divorce. Ju froze for a moment. The shock in his eyes was obvious. As if he had heard an absurd joke. What did you say? I spoke every word clearly and slowly. I said, I choose divorce. I stood up, walked up to him, held out my hand. The divorce papers, give them to me. He didn't move, just stared at me intensely, his gaze dark and unreadable, like he was examining a stranger he had never known. He probably thought I was being temperamental, using this as a way to get his attention, to force him to retract his order. But he was dead wrong. A woman's heart doesn't turn cold in an instant. It was 3 years of neglect. 3 years of cold politeness. 3 years of sleeping in an empty room. Especially when I was pregnant with Shiheng, vomiting uncontrollably. Yet because Yunyao sent a single letter, he stayed in the border camp for a whole month. Since then, my heart had turned into cold ashes that could never be reignited. Lu Jiyu, he called my name, his tone carrying a warning. Do not be willful. I met his gaze calmly. Ju, you've mistaken one thing. I'm not making a scene. I am notifying you. The position of commander's wife. I no longer want it. After saying that, I didn't look at him again. I turned and walked toward the inner chamber. Shiheng's cries rang out at just the right moment. The wet nurse quickly picked up the child, gently coaxing him. I walked over, took the child from her arms. He was so small, soft and smelling of milk. As soon as he was in my arms, the crying stopped. He opened those eyes that looked just like Ju's, and looked at me innocently. My heart felt like it was being violently wrenched. Ju followed me in. He saw me holding the child. His gaze softened for a moment. He probably thought the child was my weakness, the reason I would eventually compromise. Jiu, even for the sake of Shiheng. After the divorce, Shiheng stays with you. I interrupted him. My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough for everyone in the room to hear clearly. The wet nurse and the nearby maids all gasped in unison. Ju's face turned livid instantly. He took a sudden step forward, making a move to snatch the child from my arms. I turned to dodge him, protecting the child firmly in my arms. I looked directly into his eyes filled with rage. Qingju, listen clearly. This child, I don't want him anymore. He thought I was speaking out of anger. He gave a cold laugh and stormed off. I'll give you 3 days to think it over. He threw the divorce papers he had already drafted onto the table, as if it were a charity, certain that I wouldn't dare sign it. He didn't even take the child named Nya with him. The child was left in the side courtyard, looked after by 2 trusted nannies he had brought back from the battlefield. The atmosphere in the entire commander's manor was extremely heavy. The servants looked at me with eyes full of sympathy and pity. In their eyes, a formal wife who lost her husband's favor and had to raise her rival's child was naturally the biggest joke in the capital. My personal maid, Shaji, cried until her eyes were swollen. Madam, how can you be so foolish? If you leave, what will happen to the young master? He's only 3 months old. How can he survive without his mother? I didn't answer. I just sat quietly by the window, watching the snow fall outside. My dowry had already been moved out of the manor in batches starting 3 years ago. The estates outside the capital, the shops in the south, and some hidden assets. Everything had been arranged long ago. During these years, using my status as the commander's wife, I had paved an escape route for myself that I could use at any time. Qingju thought I had nothing, that I could only depend on him. He didn't know that my real reliance was never him, but myself. The next day, Qingju didn't return. He sent word saying military affairs were busy. I knew this was a way to pressure me. He was waiting for me to bow my head, waiting for me to hold Shiheng and beg him to take back the divorce papers. I remained unmoved, eating and sleeping as usual, personally tending to Shiheng. I held him, smelling the faint scent of milk on him over and over. Shaji stood by, her tears falling even harder. She thought I had come to my senses, and decided to stay for the young master's sake. Madam, it's good that you've thought it through. As long as you are here, the young master is still the commander's legitimate son. I shook my head. Shaji, how many years have you been with me? 5 years, madam. If you trust me, then do as I say. This money is enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life. There is a small house in the west of the city. Go and settle there first. Remember, from now on, you have nothing more to do with me. Shaji knelt on the ground, crying until she almost couldn't breathe. Madam, are you casting me away? I helped her up with both hands. I'm not casting you away. I'm giving you a way to live. After I leave, Qingju's anger will surely fall upon those close to me. If you follow me, there will only be a dead end. Letting you go is to protect you. The 3rd day was the final deadline Qingju gave me. I woke up before dawn. I fed Shiheng for the last time. The little guy ate his fill and fell asleep contentedly in my arms. His eyelashes were very long, like 2 little brushes, quivering slightly in his sleep. I lowered my head and planted a soft kiss on his forehead. My child, I'm sorry mother cannot take you away. Staying by his side. You are the son of the powerful commander, with a bright future. Follow me, and you will only be an illegitimate child of unknown origin, facing endless pursuit and exile. Forgive mother's selfishness. I took the letter I had prepared and tucked it into Shiheng's swaddling. The letter only had 1 sentence. I signed the papers. I don't want the child anymore. Afterwards, I left the commander's manor quietly through the side gate, without alerting anyone. The snow in the capital had stopped. The streets were covered in a thick layer of snow, crunching under my feet. An inconspicuous carriage was parked at the corner. The driver was someone I had arranged long ago. I got into the carriage and drove toward the city gate without looking back. I knew once Qingju discovered I was really gone, he would be thunderously enraged. He would seal the city gates and send people everywhere to hunt me down. But he wouldn't expect that I had no intention of hiding. The carriage headed east, arriving at the Tongzhou pier outside the city before dawn. A large ship flying a transport flag had been waiting for a long time. The ship's captain was a leader of the transport guild, who owed my father a favor years ago. I showed him the token, and he welcomed me aboard without a word. The ship set sail soon after, heading south along the canal. Standing at the bow, watching the outline of the capital fade away, there was no trace of regret in my heart, only the lightness of escaping a cage. Qingju, farewell. I am Lu Jiyu no more. From now on, I have nothing to do with you. I only heard later that when Qingju returned to the manor that morning and saw the empty room and the signed divorce papers on the table, he crushed the teacup in his hand on the spot. He ordered a citywide lockdown, searching for any sign of me. When he found the letter in Shiheng's swaddling, that man of immense power, who was decisive on the battlefield, showed a look of panic for the first time. He rushed out of the manor like a madman, personally leading men to the Tongzhou pier, but he was too late. The river was filled only with vast mist. It was said he stood on the pier for an entire day and night, until he was frozen stiff by the wind and snow, before his subordinates forcibly took him back. He never believed I could be so heartless, to even abandon my own flesh and blood. He thought I was just hiding, and would return once his anger subsided. Until the day he died, I never returned to the capital. The climate in the south is always mild. When the ship docked in Yangzhou, it was blooming season. I bought a small house by the water here. The house wasn't big, but it was elegant, with a small garden. I gave myself a new name and no one knew my past. People in Yangzhou only knew that a widow named An had moved to the south of the city. She had some money, but lived very quietly. I dismissed most of the servants, only keeping a mute old woman to help with housework. Half a year after I left the capital, Xiaoji managed to find me. She had sold that small house, determined to stay by my side. I couldn't argue with her, so I let her stay. Life became stable. I took the money I brought, bought several shop fronts, and started a silk and tea business. My father had taught me how to do business when he was alive. In those years, life in the inner manor had smoothed some edges, but the things in my bones couldn't be erased. The business soon got on track. Within 3 to 5 years, I had become a well-known merchant in Yangzhou. I was no longer the commander's wife living by another's breath. I was he, living for herself. Occasionally, I would think of Shiheng, especially in the dead of night. I would wonder how tall he had grown, if he could speak, if he had learned to walk, if Qingju treated him well. But such thoughts usually passed in a flash. I knew I had no way back. Going back was a dead end. Qingju's pride would never allow a woman who abandoned him to live peacefully in this world, so I had to live well for myself. News of Qingju still reached my ears in bits and pieces. Merchant caravans traveled far and wide, always bringing back rumors from the capital. They said Commander Qin had never remarried since his wife passed away. He put all his energy into the 2 children. He especially doted on his eldest daughter, Qin Yayao. For her, he even declined the emperor's arranged marriage. As for the only son, Qin Shiheng, he didn't seem to be in favor. I heard Commander Qin rarely held him, and rarely spoke to him. The young master's personality became very withdrawn, silent and solitary. Hearing this, my heart still hurt. But I was powerless. This path was my choice, and I had to bear the consequences. Xiaoji advised me more than once. Why don't we sneak back to see the young master? Just a distant look, without letting the commander find out. Every time, I just shook my head. The capital was forbidden territory. I couldn't take that risk. Until the 7th year after I left the capital, an unexpected person appeared in the shop. That day, I was checking the accounts. A cold-faced man stepped in. He looked to be in his early 30s, but his gaze carried a weariness and sharpness beyond his years. He was followed by a boy of 7 or 8, exquisitely beautiful, his features looking exactly like Qingju's. But that small face was full of cold-guardedness, lacking any of the innocence a child should have. My heart skipped a beat. The beads of the abacus slipped from my fingers, clattering all over the floor. The man didn't look at me, his gaze falling on a bolt of silk on the counter. I want this fabric. His voice was deep, carrying an air of authority. I steadied myself, forcing myself to remain calm. Sir, this silk, before I could finish. My wrist was grabbed by a hand, as strong as iron. The man had somehow moved close to the counter. A pair of hawk-like eyes locked onto me. Lu Jiu, he almost spoke through gritted teeth, forcing the name out. The blood in my body turned cold instantly. He was Qingju's confidant. His shadow. The leader of the secret guards, Qin Che. He had actually found this place. The boy beside him raised his eyes to look at me. There was a stranger's scrutiny in his eyes, and a deeply hidden, cautious longing. His lips moved, as if he wanted to say something, but he just tightened them. The grip on my hand tightened, almost crushing my bones. Madam, you've hidden long enough. The general has searched for you for 7 years. Now, it's time to come back with me. As soon as he spoke, a dozen guards swarmed into the shop, surrounding it completely. I knew there was no escape. Qin Che looked at my pale face, and gave a cruel smile. Oh, I almost forgot to introduce. This is the young master, Qin Shiheng. The general ordered me to bring him to see with his own eyes. To see the mother who, for her own sake, abandoned him and ignored him for 7 years. Just what kind of person she is. Qin Che's words were like a poisoned blade, piercing accurately into my softest spot. I looked at Shiheng. A child of 7 should be carefree, but his eyes were like a deep, bottomless well, with no light and no warmth. The reflection of me in them was a pale, disheveled stranger, a mother who abandoned her husband and son. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, painful and suffocating, but I couldn't show it. In front of Qingju's men, any trace of weakness would become a weapon against me. I took a deep breath, forcing down the intense pain, and met Qin Che's gaze. My eyes were as cold as ice. Commander Qin, you have the wrong person. My name isn't he. I am a merchant. I know nothing of Lu Jiu, or any young master. I know nothing at all. Qin Che looked as if he had heard a ridiculous joke. He chuckled softly. Madam, it's been 7 years. And your acting is as superb as ever. Unfortunately, the general already anticipated this. He released my wrist, slowly pulling a scroll from his robes, and unfurled it before me. In the painting was a woman leaning against a window checking accounts. Her features, her expression, even the tiny red mole on her earlobe, were identical to mine. It was exactly how I looked a few days ago, sitting in the shop and checking the accounts. My heart sank instantly. So they had found me long ago. The past few days, they were just lurking in the shadows, merely for final confirmation. Today was the day they closed the net. The artist said you were very alert, and only dared to sketch an outline from a distance. But the general took one look, and knew it was you. He said, even if you were reduced to ashes, he would still recognize you. My nails dug hard into my palms. Qin Ju, he wouldn't let me go after all. Shiheng remained silent, just staring at me with those dark, heavy eyes. There was no hate or longing in his gaze, only a hollow indifference. It was as if he was looking at an object that had nothing to do with him. This indifference was more heartbreaking than any accusation or resentment. Xiaoji heard the commotion and rushed out from the backyard. Seeing Qin Che and the room full of guards, her face turned deathly pale. She instinctively stood in front of me, like a mother hen protecting her chick. What are you doing? Qin Che glanced at her coldly. Xiaoji, you're still alive as well. Excellent. The general has ordered that those who supposedly died with the madam back then, not a single one is to be missed. Bring them all back. My heart chilled. He intends to leave no one behind. I pulled Xiaoji behind me, and took a step forward. Qin Che, I am the one responsible for my actions. This has nothing to do with her. Let her go. Qin Che sneered coldly. Madam, you are in no position to negotiate terms with us now. Take her away. At his command, 2 guards came forward to seize me. Xiaoji screamed and tried to rush to me, but was pinned down firmly by 2 other guards. The staff and customers shrank into the corners in fear, not daring to make a sound. I didn't struggle. Struggling was futile. Those brought by Qin Che were all the most elite secret guards under Qin Ju. I just looked at Shiheng. From start to finish, he stood there like an outsider, watching coldly, as his own biological mother was treated like a prisoner and hauled away. There was still no expression on that little face. Outside stood an extremely large and sturdy carriage made of black iron. It was a prison carriage, specifically used for transporting high-profile criminals. Qin Ju was treating me as a criminal. Just before I was pushed into the black iron prison carriage, Shiheng, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke. Wait. His voice had the crispness of a child, but it was cold, devoid of any warmth. Everyone was taken aback. Even Qin Che was quite surprised. He turned and asked respectfully, what are your orders, young master? Shiheng ignored him, and walked slowly up to me. He looked up. For the first time in 7 years. It was the first time we, mother and son, had gazed at each other from such close proximity. I could clearly see his long, thick eyelashes, and the flash of an emotion I couldn't quite decipher deep in his eyes. He seemed to want to ask something, but the words died on his lips. He simply reached out a small hand, and pointed at the sachet hanging from my waist. That was something I had hand-embroidered myself, filled with calming herbs. This is mine, he said, in a tone more like a command than a request. I froze. The pattern was just something I had embroidered casually. There was nothing special about it. Why did he claim it was his? Qin Che's brow also furrowed, clearly confused. Shiheng stared at me stubbornly. He looked exactly like Qin Ju. Give it back to me. Looking into those clear, piercing eyes, a sudden, wild thought occurred to me. I slowly untied the sachet. The moment I placed it in his palm, I used my fingernail to gently scratch the back of the sachet where it wasn't noticeable. I scratched a tiny character, wait. Shiheng took the sachet, clutching it tightly in his small hand. He didn't give me another glance. He turned and walked away, simply saying, let's go. Qin Che gave me a long, deep look, his gaze complex. Eventually, he waved his hand. I was pushed into the prison carriage. The moment the door shut, I looked out through the small window, and saw Shiheng boarding another carriage. He sat by the window with his head bowed, that small hand still clutching the sachet for dear life. The convoy slowly set off, leaving Yangzhou. My mind was in a whirl because of his strange behavior. What was so special about that sachet? Why did he demand it in front of everyone? And what was that last look hinting at? My thoughts were a tangled mess. But one thing was crystal clear. Things were not as simple as they seemed. Hung, my child. What exactly are you planning? The prison carriage headed north, traveling day and night. I was trapped in that cramped space, never seeing the light of day. 3 times a day. Only coarse food was passed through the small window. Barely enough to keep me from starving to death. Xiaoji was locked in another carriage. Her fate unknown. More than half a month later. The carriage finally came to a halt. The sounds of bustling crowds and horses came from outside. We had reached the capital. The carriage door swung open. And blinding sunlight poured inside. I squinted. And saw Qin Che's expressionless face outside. Madam, please. Step out. The general is waiting for you at the manor. I stepped out of the prison carriage. The capital was as prosperous as ever, even after 7 years. But I was no longer the person I used to be. I was no longer the prestigious wife of the commander, but a prisoner. The carriage drove into the commander's manor. The manor gates were wide open. 2 rows of guards stood solemnly on both sides. The atmosphere was grave. I was taken straight to Qin Ju's study. As I passed through the familiar courtyard, every plant and tree, every pavilion and building, seemed exactly as it was the day I left. But things remained, while people had changed. 2 cold-faced guards stood at the entrance of the study. Qin Che pushed open the door, and gestured for me to enter. I stepped inside. A faint scent of ambergris permeated the room. Qin Ju was sitting behind his desk. He was wearing a black robe. His hair held up by a white jade hairpin. He was bowing his head, reviewing official documents. After 7 years, time hadn't left many traces on his face. But his expression had grown deeper and more intense. His sternness was like a blade that had been forged repeatedly. He didn't look up, acting as if he hadn't noticed my arrival at all. He was deliberately ignoring me, asserting his dominance in this matter, and belittling my lowly status. I didn't say a word either, just standing silently, observing this man I had once loved, and once hated. Now, there was only a hollow silence in my heart. Time ticked by. The only sound in the study was the scratching of his brush on paper. Suffocating and oppressive. After a long time, he finally set down his brush, and slowly looked up. In those deep, icy eyes, a whirlpool of complex emotions churned. Anger, resentment, indignation, and a pain I couldn't quite decipher. We locked eyes. Neither of us spoke first. This silent standoff lasted for a long time. Finally, he was the one to break the silence. You're back. His voice was incredibly raspy. It didn't sound like a greeting, but more like a sentencing. I was captured and brought back by you. I corrected him calmly. My calmness seemed to provoke him. He stood up abruptly, and closed the distance between us in a few strides. His tall figure loomed over me completely. An overwhelming pressure surged toward me. He reached out and grabbed my chin, forcing me to look up. Lu Jiu. Do you know your crime? His grip was incredibly strong, nearly crushing my jawbone. I winced in pain, but I refused to beg for mercy. What crime have I committed? He laughed in cold fury. Ha ha ha. Abandoning your husband and son to elope, and remaining unheard of for 7 years. You still dare to ask what your crime is? Elope? I was slightly taken aback. He actually thought I had run away with someone else. I didn't. The fury in his eyes burned even brighter. Everyone in Yangzhou knows about Madame Anne's late husband. Who exactly is he? Suddenly, I understood. When I settled in Yangzhou, I had fabricated the identity of a widow. But I never imagined this would become ironclad proof of my infidelity in his eyes. Truly absurd. Qin Ju, we have long since divorced. My affairs are none of your concern. Divorce? Because of that letter? He looked as if he had heard the most ridiculous joke. A woman who can abandon her own flesh and blood. The words written by such a woman. I don't believe a single word of it. I only know that you are my lawfully wedded wife. And Hang's mother. You ran away for 7 years. You've had enough fun. He suddenly shoved me away. I stumbled and crashed into the bookshelf behind me, barely managing to steady myself. Guards, he shouted. Throw her into the dungeon. Without my orders, no one is permitted to visit her. 2 guards pushed their way in, and moved to seize me. Qin Ju. I suddenly spoke up. Don't you want to know why I left all those years ago? His figure stiffened. His back was turned to me, his shoulders tensed up tightly. But in the end, he didn't turn around. I don't want to know. His voice as cold and hard as iron. I only know that anyone who betrays me will come to a bad end. I laughed, my eyes stinging with bitterness. Fine. Very well, Qin Ju. You will regret this. I said no more, and let the guards take me away. The moment I stepped out of the study, a loud crash came from behind me, as if something had been violently smashed onto the floor. The dungeon was cold and damp, permeated with a foul, musty smell. I was thrown into the cell at the very back. The iron door slammed shut behind me with a loud clang. In the darkness, I slowly sat down against the cold stone wall. There was no fear, no despair. Only one thought remained in my mind. Hung, my child. Just how much do you know? Time in the dungeon was incredibly difficult to endure. Each day, there was only one cold, hard bun, and a bowl of murky water, all of which I forced myself to swallow. I couldn't collapse. I had to stay alive, waiting for an opportunity. I didn't know how many days had passed. 3 days, perhaps 5? Suddenly, a sound came from outside the cell door, faint and hesitant footsteps. The steps were very light and slow, eventually stopping right outside my cell. I looked up, and by the dim candlelight, I saw the small, thin figure outside the iron bars. It was Shurhung, standing in this gloomy dungeon in his fine silk robes. He looked utterly out of place. He was still clutching that sachet tightly in his hand. I spoke. "What are you doing here?" My voice was raspy and dry from lack of use. He didn't answer, just staring at me silently through the iron bars. Those eyes were strikingly bright in the darkness. "They all say you didn't want me anymore." It took a long time before he finally spoke. His voice was small, carrying a faint, barely detectable tremble. It felt as if a knife were being driven into my heart. His tone was calm, without any emotion. I couldn't tell him the truth. In the cage of the commander's manor, the more one knows, the more danger they are in. He pursed his lips. "Why?" "There is no why." My indifference stung him. His eyes grew slightly red, but he forced himself not to cry. This child was much more resilient than I had imagined. "You're lying." I looked at him and said nothing. Suddenly, he pulled something from his robes and handed it through the gaps in the iron bars. It was a letter. The paper had already yellowed, its edges worn thin. It had clearly been handled many times. I took it and unfolded it. With just one glance, my pupils constricted sharply. The handwriting was indeed mine, but the contents were completely unrecognizable. It said that I had long been having an affair, that the child I carried was not Qin-Ju's flesh and blood, and that I only married into the Qin family for power. Now that my lover had come for me, I was going to take the child and run away with him. At the end, it even used vile words to curse Qin-Ju, wishing him a miserable death. How could this be? This was definitely not the letter I had left behind. Where was this letter found? My voice couldn't stop trembling. The day I was born. In my swaddling clothes. "Shurhung, your father." He saw it right then. I felt as if I'd been struck by lightning. My entire body went cold in an instant. Someone had swapped my letter after I left, using a forgery, to completely sever the last tie between me and Qin-Ju, the final possibility, and it meant that from the moment Shurhung was born, he carried a stain on his name. No wonder Qin-Ju hated me so deeply, thinking I had eloped with another man. No wonder he had ignored Shurhung for 7 years. He was incredibly cold toward him. In his eyes, Shurhung wasn't even his own child. Who on earth was it? A name flashed across my mind like lightning. Yunyao. No, that's not right. Qin-Ju said Yunyao was dead. Then was it Yunyao's family? Or was it an informant she had planted in the manor? This letter is a forgery. I stared at Shurhung, speaking each word clearly. How can you prove it? His small body trembled slightly. His eyes were full of hesitation. I was momentarily speechless. 7 years have passed, and everything has changed. I have no proof but my words. How could I prove my innocence? Shurhung suddenly held up the sachet in his hand. This sachet. Why did you give it to me? My heart leaped into my throat. He found it. Were you trying to tell me? He leaned closer, his voice so low only the two of us could hear. To tell me to wait? I stared at him in astonishment. He had actually understood that character. When I scratched that character, it was merely a desperate, last-ditch effort. I hadn't even dared to hope for anything. How could a 7-year-old child? Possibly, I recognize your handwriting. He seemed to see through my doubts. I've secretly seen the calligraphy you left behind. There are many pieces in Father's study. He says he hates you, but he keeps all of your things. My eyes instantly grew moist. Qin-Ju. So, there is indeed a problem with this letter. Shurhung continued. Your handwriting is very similar to the writing in this letter. But there are subtle differences. The person who wrote this letter was deliberately imitating you. Also, it was winter when you left. But the letter says you were going to Jiangnan to see peach blossoms. The timing doesn't match up. I stared at him in a daze, unable to speak for a long moment. These flaws, which even an adult might not have noticed, were seen clearly by a 7-year-old child. My son. He was far more intelligent and perceptive than I had ever imagined. So, what are you waiting for? His bright, dark eyes stared at me without blinking. I am waiting for an opportunity, a chance to prove my innocence. I suppressed the excitement in my heart, and kept my voice extremely low as well. I need your help. He remained silent, asking him to help a mother, who had abandoned him for 7 years, to go against his powerful father. It was far too difficult and dangerous for him. Why should I help you? He asked. Because we are mother and son, connected by blood, and because only by proving my innocence can it be proven that you are not what they say you are. You are the legitimate son of the Qin family. These words clearly struck a chord with him. He pursed his lips tightly, his small face filled with inner conflict. After a long time, he gave a firm nod. What do you want me to do? Find someone for me. An old nanny who used to be by Yunyao's side, and who remained in the manor afterwards. Nanny Zhang. Find her, and find a way to get evidence of her communications with the outside world. This matter most likely involves her. Fine. Wait. He stuffed the forged letter back into my hands. Keep this, it might be useful later. Then, he turned around, and disappeared without hesitation into the darkness at the end of the corridor. I gripped the letter tightly. My heart filled with a mixture of emotions. Hope and danger arrived at the same time. Qin Ju, and that hidden enemy in the shadows. The opening moves of this chess match have only just begun. After Shirhan left, the dungeon returned to a deathly silence. But I knew that something had changed. I saw a glimmer of hope in the darkness. 2 days later, when the cell door opened once more, it wasn't Shirhan who appeared, but Qin Ju. He was dressed in his official court robes, his expression cold and stern. It was clear he had come straight here after court. He was carrying a food container. He ordered the jailer to open the cell door, and stepped inside. The gloomy dungeon became even more stifling with his arrival. He placed the food container on the floor, and opened the lid. Inside were several exquisite small dishes, and a bowl of steaming hot rice porridge. All were things I used to love eating. He looked at me, his tone unreadable. I didn't move. What, planning a hunger strike? He sneered. Lu Jiu. Put away your petty tricks. They are useless against me. If I wanted to die, I would have died 7 years ago. I looked back at him calmly. I wouldn't have waited until today, just to have you show me crocodile tears. His expression shifted, darkening as if he were about to explode, but he forcibly suppressed his anger. He just stared at me intently, his eyes like blades forged of ice. Do you really hate me this much? I don't hate you. I'm just saying. I don't love you anymore. These words stung him more than any vicious curse ever could. His body visibly swayed, his face turning as pale as paper. Good, very good. No longer love me, is it? He gritted his teeth, enunciating every word. Lu Jiu. You had better remember what you said today. When you were kneeling before me, begging for mercy. I want to see if you can still be this stubborn. With that, he swept his sleeves and left, without giving me another look. However, he did not take the food container with him. I looked at the dishes, my heart feeling cold as ice. This was his final test, and his final ultimatum. Eating meant submission, not eating meant even more cruel humiliation awaited me. I did not hesitate. I picked up the bowl of porridge, and swallowed it slowly, spoonful by spoonful. I cannot die. And I certainly cannot provoke him further at this moment. I must live to wait for news from Shirhang. I must make him believe that I have begun to yield. After that day, Qin Ju did not return, but the meals sent to the dungeon became more lavish with each passing day. There were even my favorite pastries and soups. My bedding was replaced with clean, dry linens. I understood. This was Qin Ju's tactic. Cast someone into hell first, then show a bit of kindness to break their will. Pity he miscalculated. The me of today is no longer the Lu Jiu of 7 years ago, who would be overwhelmed by his favor, just because of a tiny bit of tenderness. A few days later, Shirhang finally appeared outside the cell door again. He looked a bit thinner, but his eyes were exceptionally bright. He leaned against the iron bars, and lowered his voice. Nanny Zhang leaves the manor once a month, to go to Jishir Pharmacy in the west of the city. My heart skipped a beat. Jishir Pharmacy, that is an industry belonging to Yunyao's family. She claims she suffers from chronic headaches, and needs a specific herb only found at Jishir Pharmacy. But I had someone check. She is quite healthy, and doesn't have headaches at all. Shirhang paused. Furthermore, every time she goes, she stays in a private room for a long time. The situation became crystal clear to me. Nanny Zhang was using the pretense of getting medicine to meet with someone. But did you find out who she met with? Shirhang shook his head. Jishir Pharmacy is heavily guarded. My people couldn't get in. However, he pulled a small paper packet from his robe, and handed it to me. I managed to get this. I opened the packet. Inside were some medicinal dregs. Bringing it to my nose, I caught a faint but very distinct scent. It was aconite. This herb is harmless on its own, but once mixed with heartbreak flower, it becomes a colorless, tasteless, slow-acting poison. At first, one only feels fatigue and lethargy, but over time, the internal organs fail, leading to death. It looks exactly like dying from a sudden illness. My mind reeled. 7 years ago, Qin Ju told me that Yunyao had died of a severe illness. But looking at this now, a terrifying thought rose from the depths of my heart. Did Yunyao really die of illness? Or, did she not die at all? That child named Yunyao. Is she really Yunyao's orphan? Or another chess piece she personally placed? Countless mysteries wove into a giant web. entangling me tightly. My voice was somewhat dry. How did you get this? I had the kitchen staff. Add a bit of croton seed to her soup. Shirheng replied nonchalantly. She had diarrhea for a whole day. When it came time to discard the medicinal dregs, I had someone quietly pick them up. I stared at him blankly. A 7-year-old child, whose mind was actually this meticulous and ruthless. Just what has he experienced all these years? My heart began to ache again. To be honest, I'm fine, he interrupted me. As if knowing what I wanted to say. In this house, one cannot survive without being this way. His tone was as flat as if he were talking about someone else. What's the next step? I forced myself to calm down. All the clues converged on Nanny Zhang and Jishir Pharmacy. But I was trapped in a dilemma. Unable to move an inch. Though Shirheng was clever, he was, after all, only a child. I desperately needed an assistant. Someone who could move freely within the governor's manor, and not raise Qin Ju's suspicion. Qin Yunyao, the one Qin Ju holds in the palm of his hand. Yunyao's nominal orphan. She is the person most able to get close to Nanny Zhang, without being on guard. I looked at him and spoke slowly. Shirheng, I need you to do one thing. Get close to Qin Yunyao. Shirheng's body stiffened visibly, and a flash of disgust and resistance crossed his eyes. Everyone in the governor's manor knew that the young master, Qin Xiying, and the eldest miss, Qin Yunyao, had always been like fire and water. Qin Ju's favoritism and the servants' fickle attitudes had carved a deep chasm between these two children. I know it's difficult, asking you to get close to her, but right now, only she can help us. She is Qin Ju's only weakness, and our only chance. I waited for his answer. I knew that this request, for a 7-year-old child, was too cruel. It was no different from pushing him into another battlefield created by my own hands. But I had no other choice. Shirheng was silent for a long time. So long that I almost thought he would refuse. He looked up. Fine. I know what to do. After he left, I began to plan the next step. Having Shirheng get close to Qin Yunyao was a risky move. But I had to gamble. Gamble on Qin Ju's debt to Yunyao. And gamble on the innocent Qin Yunyao was raised with these past 7 years. A child who has been too well protected is often the easiest to trust. That opportunity came sooner than expected. 3 days later, I was released from the dungeon. It was an order from Qin Ju. I returned to the Qingji courtyard where I had lived for years. The courtyard was swept clean without a speck of dust. All the furnishings exactly as they were when I left. Even the pot of orchids I had placed on the windowsill was still there. Only it had long since withered and died. Just like the meager affection between me and Qin Ju. Xiaji was also sent back. As soon as she saw me, she hugged me and cried so hard she almost fainted. I gently patted her back, signaling for her to be at ease. I knew clearly that this wasn't Qin Ju softening his heart. This was the second step of his plan. He wanted me to see these familiar sights. To evoke memories of past tenderness. To make me think that as long as I was willing to bow my head, everything could go back to how it was. Truly laughable. A maid named Huamei was sent to serve me closely. She was a confidant of Nanny Zhang, a veteran in the manor. Qin Ju had sent eyes to watch me. I remained calm and acted as if I didn't know, quietly accepting Huamei's service. Qin Ju did not restrict my movement within the manor. He only ordered that without his permission, I was not to step a single foot out of the governor's manor. My daily routine was simply reading and doing needlework, or walking in the garden to clear my mind. The very picture of a resigned and obedient housewife. Huamei naturally reported my every move, in great detail to Nanny Zhang, who then passed it on to Qin Ju. I was happy to let them relax their guard. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of the month, and it was Qin Yunyao birthday. The governor's manor was decorated with lanterns and banners, brimming with joy. For his precious daughter, Qin Ju threw an extremely lavish birthday banquet. In the capital, almost all families of status received an invitation. I knew the opportunity had come. Before the banquet began, I had Xiaji make a trip to Shirheng's courtyard, to deliver a bowl of longevity noodles I had made myself, along with a message. Tonight is his only chance. The banquet started in the evening. As the governor's wife, I naturally had to attend. When I appeared in the banquet hall, the eyes of the entire room turned toward me at once. There was surprise, there were formal greetings, there was sympathy, and there was also gloating. I ignored it all, walking straight to the seat beside the main host's position, and slowly sat down. In that position that once belonged to me, now sat Qin Yunyao. She wore a fiery red brocade skirt, her hair full of jewels, dressed truly like a little princess. Qin Ju sat by her side, his gaze doting, as he personally served her food. Shirheng sat far away at the other end, his small silhouette in the midst of the bustling celebration, looking exceptionally lonely. He kept his head down, silently picking at the food in his bowl, not conversing with anyone, like a forgotten shadow. My heart felt another pang of pain. When everyone was half drunk, the guests one after another came forward to present birthday gifts to Qin Yanyan. All sorts of rare treasures piled up in half the room. Qin Yanyan laughed merrily, like a proud little peacock. When it was Shiheng's turn, everyone's gaze focused on him. Shiheng stood up, took out an object wrapped tightly in cloth from his robe, walked up to Qin Yanyan and handed it over. Happy birthday. Yanyan curled her lip, clearly not very appreciative, but she still took it in front of all the guests and opened it reluctantly. As the cloth was pulled away, inside was a small bird carved out of wood. The craftsmanship wasn't the most exquisite, but it was lifelike. The wings and tail could even move. One could tell a lot of thought had gone into it. Qin Yanyan gave a disdainful snort, and was about to toss the wooden bird aside when, wait, Qin Ju suddenly spoke. He picked up the wooden bird and examined it closely, his expression changing instantly, becoming complex, a bit sentimental, and even carrying a hint of tenderness. He asked Shiheng, did you carve this yourself? Shiheng nodded. Yes. Qin Ju fell silent, fingering the wooden bird. After a long while, I knew he was remembering Yunyao. Yunyao loved these kinds of clever little trinkets the most. Back then, she had also personally carved a similar wooden magpie for Qin Ju. This was all part of my earlier design. I wanted to use this object to draw out Qin Ju's memory and guilt regarding Yunyao, and also make Shiheng's gift stand out. Yunyao, Qin Ju handed the wooden bird back to his daughter. This is a token of your brother's affection. Keep it well. Though Qin Yanyan was unwilling, she ultimately nodded obediently. Shiheng's first step was successful. He had successfully left a special impression in the hearts of both Qin Yanyan and Qin Ju. It was at this moment, amidst the crowd, a servant carrying a bowl of scalding hot soup hurried through, when suddenly his foot slipped, and his whole body pitched forward. That bowl of hot soup, without straying, slashed right toward Qin Yanyan. Qin Yanyan let out a piercing scream of fright. In a flash, a small figure lunged forward, firmly shielding Qin Yanyan. It was Shiheng. The boiling soup poured entirely over his back. He let out a sharp gasp of pain, his small body trembling violently, but he gritted his teeth, neither crying nor shouting, only standing firm amidst the deathly silence of the hall. Qin Ju was the first to snap back to reality. He rushed over and scooped Shiheng up in his arms, his voice for the first time laced with panic. Quick! Call the imperial physician. I sat in my seat, my nails digging hard into my palms. I knew this was no accident. It was a self-injury scheme designed by Shiheng himself. He used this small body of his to fight for himself, and for me, a chance for a reversal. My child, just how much more unknown endurance do you still hide? The physician arrived quickly. Shiheng's back was scalded a bright red, with several terrifying blisters forming. The physician applied medicine and bandaged him, and during the whole process, he didn't make a sound, only biting his lip hard, cold sweat drenching his forehead. Qin Ju stood by the bed, his face grim, his eyes filled with an unprecedented anxiety and regret. Qin Yanyan was also terrified, standing to the side with a pale little face, tears falling like rain. She sobbed softly, her voice like a knife. Brother, I'm sorry. Shiheng didn't pay her any mind. When the physician finished and withdrew, Qin Ju knelt down to look at Shiheng, his voice carrying an almost imperceptible tremor. Why? Why did you jump in front of her? Shiheng looked up, his gaze clear, yet carrying a hint of stubbornness. She is my sister. He said only these 4 words. These 4 words were like a heavy hammer, slamming hard against Qin Ju's heart. He stared blankly at Shiheng, his lips moving, but not a single word could come out. For so many years, he had been indifferent to this son, extremely cold, even doubting his bloodline. But at the most dangerous moment, this child he had ignored for 7 years, had without hesitation used his body to protect his sister, just because she is his sister. A massive wave of guilt and remorse instantly overwhelmed Qin Ju. He reached out his hand, as if wanting to stroke Shiheng's head, but his hand hung in midair, and finally pulled back. He didn't know how to face this son. Rest well. In the end, he only dropped that line, before getting up and leaving the room as if fleeing. I knew my scheme had worked. Shiheng's self-injury act not only made Qin Yanyan feel guilty toward him, but also completely pierced through Qin Ju's final defense. Once a seed of doubt is planted, it will grow and sprout wildly. Qin Ju began to doubt the authenticity of that letter from 7 years ago, and doubt all his judgments of me. In the following days, the atmosphere in the governor's manor underwent a subtle change. Qin Ju began to frequently enter Shiheng's room, though he remained sparse with words. He would personally watch him drink his medicine, and bring him some novel little trinkets. Though the ice between father and son hadn't completely melted, the first crack had already appeared. Qin Yanyan also changed. She no longer mocked or sneered at Shiheng. Instead, every day she clumsily crowded into his room, wanting to help take care of him. though she often made things worse by helping. That guilt and concern were genuine. Shirhang's attitude remained cold, but he no longer deliberately avoided her, tacitly allowing her to be near. Everything was moving in the direction I had envisioned. I was still confined within the Qingji courtyard, playing the role of a well-behaved prisoner. Huame's surveillance continued. But I could sense that Qin Ju's heart was in turmoil. His feelings for me were no longer pure hate. He began secretly sending people to re-examine the events of 7 years ago. He did it very covertly, but the informants I had planted in the manor years ago still brought me news. He was investigating everyone I had contact with, before and after I left the capital, investigating the origins of that letter, and even starting to suspect Nanny Zhang, because the first person to discover that letter back then, and deliver it to him, was precisely Nanny Zhang. Nanny Zhang clearly also sensed the danger. She left the manor less and less frequently, becoming increasingly vigilant and careful. But the more she acted this way, the more it proved her guilty conscience. The opportunity finally came. Half a month later, Shirhang's burns were mostly healed. On this day, Qin Yanniao came to see him again, bringing him a piece of her favorite sweet osmanthus cake. Shirhang looked at the cake, and suddenly spoke. I want to eat the chestnut cake from Fuji's in the south of the city. Qin Yanniao was taken aback. Fuji's? That shop is very far away. Shirhang gave a faint reply, his face showing a perfectly timed disappointment. Qin Yanniao's heart softened instantly. She patted her chest and guaranteed, brother, if you want to eat it, I will go buy it for you. I'll have Nanny Zhang accompany me. A spark of light flashed in Shirhang's eyes. I knew this was the opportunity he had created for me. Nanny Zhang was the confidante left behind by Yunyao. And even more so, she was currently the focus of Qin Ju's suspicion. Qin Ju would never allow her to take Qin Yanniao alone. Out of the manor, he would surely send guards to follow them. And this was my chance. I immediately ordered Xia Ji to prepare a set of inconspicuous clothing for me. Then I found Huame, claiming I wanted to go to the lakeside pavilion in the back garden to get some fresh air. Huame was initially wary of me, only saying she was uneasy and would go with me. I nodded in agreement. Arriving at the lakeside pavilion, I told her to wait outside the pavilion, while I pulled back the curtain to enter. The pavilion was draped with heavy curtains on all 4 sides. After entering, I took out a pre-made straw figure from my sleeve, that was similar in shape to me, dressed it in my outer clothes, and leaned it against a pillar. From a quick glance from outside, it would look like someone was sitting quietly inside. Afterward, I quietly slipped out from the other side of the pavilion, and jumped into a small boat moored by the shore. On the boat was a gardener I had bribed with a large sum earlier. He rowed the boat, taking me quietly out of the governor's manor. I had to arrive in the south of the city. Before Nanny Zhang and Qin Yanniao did, I wanted to see with my own eyes just who Nanny Zhang was meeting with. Qin Ju, the inescapable net you laid out. Today I will personally tear a hole in it. Across the street from the Fuji pastry shop in the south was a tea house. I chose a private room by the window on the second floor and sat down, where I could see everything happening in front of Fuji's. Xia Ji stood nervously behind me, worrying as she said, Miss, what if the general finds out? He won't. Qin Ju's attention is currently fully focused on Nanny Zhang. The secret guards he sent to trail her will only be hiding deeper than I am. And as for Huame discovering the straw figure in the pavilion, that will be at least an hour from now. An hour is enough for me to do many things. I wasn't just waiting for Nanny Zhang, but also for Qin Ju's secret guards. Only after they make their move can I fish in troubled waters. After about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, a familiar carriage stopped in front of Fuji's. It was the governor's carriage. The carriage curtain was lifted, and Qin Yanniao was the first to hop out. Following closely behind was Nanny Zhang, wearing an inconspicuous dark brown outfit, her expression even more alert than usual. A pair of shrewd eyes scanned the surroundings. She supported Qin Yanniao, muttering, slow down, miss, with a face full of affection. If I hadn't known her true nature, I probably would have been fooled by this appearance of loyal devotion. Qin Yanniao pulled her along as they rushed into the shop. When their figures disappeared into the store, I set down my teacup, a glimmer in my eyes. In a dark corner of the street, several men disguised as street vendors. Their gazes suddenly sharpened. They were Qin Ju's men. Nanny Zhang and Qin Yanniao stayed in the shop for 15 minutes. Only then did Qin Yanniao come out, carrying a box of chestnut cakes with satisfaction. Nanny Zhang followed behind, with an extra small oil paper package in her hand. Qin Yanniao asked curiously what it was, but Nanny Zhang only smiled and said it was a snack for herself. Just as they were about to board the carriage and leave, a shout rang out. Several masked men in black jumped out from nowhere, charging at the carriage with sharp blades. The accompanying guards drew their swords to fight back, and chaos ensued. The secret guards disguised as vendors also made their move at this moment. Their target was not the assassins, but Nanny Zhang. Nanny Zhang, come with us. The leader was indeed Qin Che. Nanny Zhang turned pale with fright and tried to flee, but Qin Che grabbed her by the arm. In the struggle, the oil paper package fell from her hand to the ground. Everyone's attention was focused on the chaotic battle. No one noticed that small square of space. I flipped down from the second-floor window, landing with a light roll. I snatched the oil paper package and tucked it into my bosom, then slipped into the alley beside me. The whole process took only the time of a breath. The fighting on the street became the perfect cover. By the time I quietly returned to the tea house's private room, Xiaoji was still waiting anxiously. I pulled her along, and we left silently through the back door. I had to return to the lakeside pavilion before Qin Ju's men noticed, creating the illusion that I had never left. When I returned to the pavilion silently with Xiaoji, Huamei was still faithfully standing guard outside. I changed my clothes, hid the straw figure, and leisurely walked out of the pavilion. I called out to her as if nothing had happened. Huamei snapped out of it and hurriedly lowered her head to follow us back to the Qingji courtyard. Almost as soon as I stepped into the courtyard gate, Qin Che returned to the governor's manor with Nanny Zhang under guard. The entire manor was immediately placed under martial law. The light in Qin Ju's study burned all night long. The next day, news spread through the manor that Nanny Zhang had committed suicide out of guilt. I sat by the window, holding the cold oil paper package in my bosom. I'm afraid she was silenced by someone. Qin Ju, do you think the clues are cut off now that she's dead? You are wrong. The real clue has truly fallen into my hands now. I opened the oil paper package. It didn't contain any pastries, only a narrow slip of paper. There wasn't a single word on the paper, only a drawing of a pattern. A red lotus blooming on the peak of a snow mountain. Snowy Realm Miaoqi. A mysterious sect from the western regions that had been vanished for years. My heart sank. Yun Yao. She wasn't from the Central Plains. She was from the Snowy Realm Miaoqi. Rumor has it that this sect fell apart in an internal conflict 10 years ago. Their holy maiden led a small group of remnants into the Central Plains. Could Yun Yao be that holy maiden? She went to such lengths to get close to Qin Ju. What exactly was she plotting? And why did she fake her death? And that child? Is Qin Yun Yao really Qin Ju's flesh and blood? Mystery after mystery made my head pound. But I knew I was getting closer and closer to the truth. This day, Huamei suddenly came to report. Her expression somewhat strange. Madam, the general requests your presence in the study. When I stepped into the study, Qin Ju was standing with his back to me by the window. His back revealed an unconcealable desolation. The room was thick with the smell of blood. The Persian carpet on the floor had been removed, leaving the cold floor tiles. I guessed that Nanny Zhang was silenced right here. He didn't turn around, his voice hoarse. You're here. I asked calmly, what are the general's orders? He slowly turned around, his eyes bloodshot, his gaze complex to the extreme. There was anger, regret, pain, and a kind of almost humble pleading. This arrogant, powerful official. He was begging me. That letter was fake. I didn't speak. Nanny Zhang confessed it all. He continued with difficulty. It was her. Taking advantage of your trance after childbirth, she bribed a servant woman by your side and replaced the letter you left. That servant woman was later silenced by her. She did all of this on her own initiative. He said. She simply couldn't bear to see Yun Yao misunderstood after death. Every word he said was making excuses for Nanny Zhang. And also for himself, looking for a pardonable excuse. On her own initiative? A mere servant would have such audacity? Qin Ju, are you lying to me? Or are you lying to yourself? He closed his eyes in pain. I'm sorry. For these 7 years, it was I. It was I who failed you and Shirhuan. This was the first time I had heard him apologize. If it were 7 years ago, I might have shed tears of emotion. But now my heart is a stagnant pool of water. Can a single I'm sorry erase 7 years? I looked at him. Each word clear. Qin Ju. Are you being too naive? I know I can't make up for it. But believe me, I will treat you and our son well from now on. I will give you both the very best. The position of the governor's wife will always be yours. As for Nian Yao, he paused, struggle flashing in his eyes. I will send her to a country estate. I'll never let her appear before you again. He thought this was a great blessing to me. He thought everything I did was just out of jealousy, only to reclaim my position as the primary wife. He never understood my feelings. You still don't understand. I didn't come back to reconcile with you. I came to take away my son. His face turned deathly pale instantly, and he shouted sternly, no. Shirhuan is my son. He is the heir to the governor's manor. You cannot take him away. He's your son? In these 7 years, have you fulfilled your duty as a father for even a day? You made him live in your shadow. And now with a light I'm sorry. You want to keep him by your side? What right do you have? I asked ruthlessly. He was pushed back step by step by my questions, his lips trembling. Yet he couldn't utter a word. Qin Ju. It was over between us long ago. Letting us leave is the best ending. Impossible. He was like a trapped beast pushed to its limit, madness bursting in his eyes. Lu Jiyun, I won't let you leave even if I die. In this life, you can only be my, Qin Ju's, woman. He lunged forward, grabbing my wrist tightly. Just then, the study door was pushed open. Shiheng and Qin Yanyao stood at the door. Shiheng's face was still cold and calm, but Qin Yanyao had tears streaming down her face. Clearly, they had heard everything just now. Qin Yanyao ran in crying, clinging to Qin Ju's leg. Father, please don't send me away. I will be good and obedient from now on. And I'll never make brother angry again. Qin Ju looked at his daughter, who was a mess of tears, his heart aching uncontrollably. He bent down to pull her into his arms, comforting her gently. Silly child, how could father send you away? That tenderness was something Shiheng and I had never seen. Shiheng walked to my side, and took my hand. His hand was very small, very cold, but very strong. He looked up, staring at Qin Ju who was holding Qin Yanyao, and spoke coldly. Let us go. Otherwise you will regret it. What did you say? If you don't let us go, I will tell the emperor everything I know. I'll tell him you have a secret lover, harboring a sorceress from the western regions. The so-called niece of yours is simply a bastard of unknown origin. You have shady dealings with that fallen organization, called Snowy Realm Yaoqi. Every word was like a thunderclap, exploding in the study. Qin Ju's face turned pale instantly. He was stripped bare. He looked at Shiheng in horror, then looked at me, finally understanding. I never came back for some romantic entanglement. I came to uncover the secret that could lead to his eternal ruin. And Shiheng had been the sharp blade in my hand from the very beginning. The air in the study was tense to the extreme. Qin Ju held Qin Yanyao, staring blankly at us, mother and son, as if seeing us for the first time. Shock surged in his eyes, along with disbelief and a trace of fear. He wasn't afraid of the emperor, but of the son before him who shared his blood, yet was cold, intelligent, and even a bit ruthless. Huan. Who taught you these words? His gaze bypassed Shiheng, and landed on me. He was certain I was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. Shiheng didn't answer, only staring back at him calmly, with those dark eyes. That look didn't belong to a 7-year-old child, but rather a veteran who had long seen through the world. Do you really not know? Who is Auntie Yunyao? What exactly was she plotting by getting close to you? The sister you've always pampered in the palm of your hand. Whose child is she really? Every question was like a heavy hammer, smashing hard against Qin Ju's heart. His face grew paler and paler. Qin Yanyao in his arms also sensed something was wrong. She stopped crying, and stared at everyone, with innocent, bewildered eyes. Qin Ju didn't answer him, but stared intently at me. It's you. You found all of this out, and told Huan. His voice was hoarse. Lu Jiyun, what a cruel heart you have. To get revenge on me. You would even use your own biological son. Qin Ju. You are wrong. I'm not using him. I'm saving him. If I hadn't come back, he would have lived his whole life in your indifference and neglect, living in my shadow. As for being cruel, no matter how cruel I am, I can't compare to you. I can't compare to you, who for a woman full of conspiracies, would harm your own wife, and despise your own biological son. What right do you have to criticize me? My words were like an incredibly sharp knife, peeling away all his disguises, to reveal the bloody truth. He weakly let go of Qin Yanyao's hand. The little girl fell to the ground and burst into tears. But he no longer had the capacity to care. He staggered back and collapsed into the chair. No, how could it be like this? Little sister, she's kind and pure. She wouldn't lie to me. I sneered. Kind? Pure? A woman who could lurk by your side for 10 years. Make you completely devoted to her. And even fake her death for your sake? And you tell me she's kind and pure? Qin Ju, wake up. You were just a chess piece in her hand from beginning to end. A piece to be used to revive the snowy realm Yaoqi, and subvert the dynasty of the Central Plains. I placed the note in front of him. See for yourself. What is this? He picked it up with a trembling hand. When he saw the totem of the Snow Mountain Red Lotus, it was as if his soul had been drained away. The last trace of color drained from his face. He kept shaking his head, looking like he was on the verge of collapse. I knew. His world had completely crumbled at this moment. The love he was so proud of, the obsession he had held on to for 10 years, was nothing more than a carefully woven scam. Qin Yanyao crawled to his feet crying, tugging at his robe. Father, I'm scared. Qin Ju lowered his head, looking at this face that was 70% similar to Yunyao's. Suspicion and scrutiny appearing in his eyes for the first time. He slowly reached out, seeming to want to touch her cheek, but his hand hung in midair, finally falling weakly. He stood up, not looking at anyone else, and walked out of the study in a daze, like a shell whose soul had been extracted. Only we, mother and son, remained in the study, along with the heart-wrenchingly crying Qin Yanyao. I walked up to her, knelt down, and looked at this child who was innocently swept into the conspiracy. There was no hate in my heart, only a trace of faint pity. I gently wiped away the tears from her face with a handkerchief. Stop crying. You are not his daughter. And your mother isn't dead. She just doesn't need you anymore. Qin Yanyao's crying stopped abruptly. She stared at me with teary eyes, bewildered, clearly unable to understand the deeper meaning of these words yet. I didn't explain further. Some truths he would have to endure slowly on his own. I took Shiheng's hand. Let's go. Shiheng nodded. Mother and son, hand in hand. We walked out of this magnificent cage that had imprisoned us for too long. I knew from this moment on, my son and I were free. And Qingju's true war had only just begun. I left the governor's manor with Shiheng, without facing any obstacles. Qingju locked himself in his study, and didn't step out for 3 days and nights. The entire governor's manor was shrouded in a deathly silence. I returned to Yangzhou, back to my small courtyard by the water. Xiaji had already put everything in order here. Seeing Shiheng and me return together, she was moved to tears. Shiheng looked at this woman who was crying uncontrollably, his small face still showing little expression. But he didn't pull away from her reaching hand, allowing her closeness. I know this child is just not good at expressing himself. Deep down, he craves warmth more than anyone. Life returned to peace. I took over the business again. I sent Shiheng to the best school in the city. He was extremely intelligent, with a photographic memory. The teachers were full of praise for him. His temperament remained cold and indifferent. He didn't like to talk. Nor did he like to play with children of his own age. I understand that the rift of 7 years cannot be mended overnight. I didn't force him, but just spent as much time with him as I could, cooking for him myself, telling him warm folktales before he went to sleep, taking him to the countryside for spring outings and kite flying, pampering him as an ordinary child, rather than as the heir of the governor's manor, who bore too heavy a past. Gradually, the ice on his face began to show signs of melting. Occasionally, he would curl his lips into a smile for me, though only for a moment. It was enough to make me ecstatic. At school, he also found 2 classmates to talk to. They weren't many, but at least he was no longer all alone. News from the capital still trickled in. It was said that Qingju had fallen seriously ill, and after he recovered, he became a changed man, becoming increasingly silent, and increasingly cold-blooded. He still provided Qin Yanyao with fine food and clothes. But there was no longer half the previous pampering. The way he looked at her was like looking at a most familiar stranger. That once arrogant and overbearing little princess had completely withered, becoming timid and cowardly, hiding in her courtyard all day. Hearing these things, there was no joy in my heart. She was also a pitiful person. I just couldn't sympathize with her. Everyone's destiny has its own origin. She had enjoyed 7 years of wealth that didn't belong to her. Now was just the time to pay it back. Qingju began to use all his power to frantically eliminate the cases of snowy realm Miaoqi in the Central Plains. Following the lead of the Jishir Hall, he dug out one stronghold after another. The capital was a storm of blood and gore. Many officials associated with the snowy realm Miaoqi fell from power one after another. I knew this was his declaration of war against Yunyao, and also against his own ridiculous past. I thought there would never be any more intersection between us. Until that day, Qin Che appeared before me once again. He was alone and in disguise, looking much more haggard and exhausted than last time. He stood before me, and gave a deep bow. Madam, the general wishes to see you. He and I have long since cut ties. There's nothing to see, I said flatly. The general said, it's about Yunyao. He lowered his voice. The general found out that Yunyao is not dead. She is in the capital, and she seems to want to harm Miss Yunyao. I frowned. Even a tiger doesn't eat its cubs. Would Yunyao not even spare her own flesh and blood? Or rather, Qin Yunyao is simply not her daughter? The general hopes you can return to the capital once more, Qin Che continued. He said, only you can help him uncover Yunyao's final mask. I fell silent. I really didn't want to step foot in the capital again. But if this venomous snake, Yunyao, lurking in the shadows, isn't completely eradicated, Shiheng and I would never have peace. More importantly, I also wanted to know the truth of what happened back then. Why did she go to such lengths? To deliberately ruin my life? Fine, I'll go back with you. But I have one condition. I'm taking Shi Huan with me. I want him to see with his own eyes how that woman who harmed us mother and son for 7 years reaps what she sowed. I want him to know that justice may be delayed, but it will never be absent. I took Shiheng back to the capital again. This time, I didn't enter the governor's manor. Outside the city, Qingju arranged a quiet separate villa for us. He came to see me once. In just a few short months, he looked as if he had aged 10 years, with gray hair appearing at his temples. He looked at me, his gaze complex beyond words. Thousands of words were on the tip of his tongue, but they only turned into a low, "Horse, you're here." I nodded, getting straight to the point. What exactly does Yunyao want to do? I don't know. He shook his head, his voice weary. I only know her people have been monitoring Yunyao in secret. I'm afraid she will kill Yunyao. So, what do you want me to do? When Qingju said these words, a trace of awkwardness crossed his eyes. I want you to pretend to be my new love. I'm going to release news that I'm about to remarry and hold a grand banquet. I will invite all the dignitaries of the city. I want Yunyao to think that I have completely forgotten her. With a new beginning. With his temperament. He would never allow any other woman to take her place. He will definitely come. I understood clearly. He wants to use me as bait. To lure the snake out of its hole. Using me, the woman he hates most, as bait, is indeed the best choice. Why should I help you? I looked at him coldly. Because you don't want to live in her shadow forever. Only by rooting her out completely. Can you and Shurheng truly rest easy? He wasn't lying. Fine. I agree. But I have 3 conditions. First, Shurheng will not participate in this act. You must send him to an absolutely safe place. Second, once the matter is settled, you must announce to the world that I am innocent and give justice to the Lu family. Third, I want you to personally deal with Yunyao to bring a conclusion to your foolish love. And these 7 years of injustice. Qingju's body jolted violently. He closed his eyes, his face full of agony. After a long time, he opened them. He nodded heavily. All right. I promise you everything. The plan was thus decided. Shurheng was secretly sent by Qingju to a royal villa on the outskirts of the city. It was heavily guarded, impenetrable, and I, in the capacity of Qingju's fiancé, moved back into the governor's manor with high profile. As soon as the news broke, the entire capital instantly boiled over. No one expected that Governor Qin, who was rumored to be deeply in love with his late wife, would find a new love so quickly. What was even more shocking was that this new love was no one else but the former governor's wife, who had supposedly died of illness 7 years ago, Lu Jiyu. Rumors flew everywhere. Some said I never died back then, but had run away with someone, and now I had the nerve to return. Others said I was a vixen reincarnated, using some underhanded methods. I ignored them all. Every day, I appeared in public with Qingju, listening to plays, boating on the lake. I let him buy me the most luxurious clothes and the most expensive jewelry. We acted more like a pair of lovers in deep love than any other couple in the world. I knew that countless eyes were staring intently from the shadows, filled with jealousy and resentment. Yunyao probably couldn't sit still much longer. The banquet was set for half a month later. At the governor's manor, Qingju had already set an inescapable net, waiting for that venomous snake to walk right into it. The day before the banquet, Qin Yunyao suddenly came to find me. She had lost a lot of weight and had become much quieter. The arrogant little princess of the past was gone. Standing before me was a little girl with eyes full of fear and unease. She looked at me timidly. Are you really going to marry father? I kept silent. After that, will you be good to me? Will you be as good to me as you are to brother? I won't be good to you. Nor will I be bad to you. Because soon, there will be no more connection between us. She froze, obviously not understanding. I didn't explain further. Just took out a small rattle drum from a jewelry box. The drum was very old. It was the one I made with my own hands for Shurheng. This is for you. For tomorrow's banquet. Stay in your own room. Don't go anywhere. Remember, no matter what noise you hear, do not come out. This is the only thing I can do for you. She took the drum and nodded blankly. I didn't know how much she understood, nor did I know what kind of fate awaited her. I only knew that everything would be settled tomorrow. The day of the banquet. The governor's manor was crowded with guests. I stood by Qingju's side in a bright red wedding dress, accepting congratulations with a smile. Though I wore a proper smile, my heart was cold. I knew tonight was destined to be a night stained with blood. Qingju held my hand, his palms soaked with cold sweat. He was waiting for the woman he had loved for 10 years, and who had also deceived him for 10 years. After 3 rounds of wine, while the guests were enjoying themselves, the banquet hall doors were suddenly pushed open. A woman dressed in white clothes walked in gracefully. Her face was veiled, obscuring her features, but her figure and aura made Qingju's body instantly freeze. It was her. She finally came. The hall fell silent. All eyes were focused on this uninvited guest. Yunyao ignored everyone. Her gaze pierced through the crowd and landed straight on Qingju's face. Her eyes were full of grief and questioning, as if Qingju were the one who had betrayed her. Qin Lang. She spoke softly. Are you truly going to fail me? She raised her hand and slowly unveiled herself. Beneath the veil was an exquisitely beautiful face, indeed sharing a 70% resemblance to Qin Yunyao, but more mature and seductive. The guests gasped in unison. They all recognized this face. A face that had appeared in countless legends. but was supposed to have withered away long ago. Whispers erupted everywhere. Everyone was filled with uncertainty. Qingju looked at that face. That had haunted his dreams for 10 years, but there wasn't a trace of joy in his eyes. Only endless coldness and loathing. You are finally willing to show yourself. Yun Yao trembled slightly. Qin Lang, are you blaming me for leaving without a word? I had my reasons too. I was framed and had to fake my death to escape. All these years, I haven't spent a single moment without thinking of you. She approached step by step. Her fragile appearance. Truly pitiful. Stop right there. Qingju spoke in a cold voice. Yun Yao's steps faltered. She looked at him in disbelief. Don't call me Qin Lang again. I find it filthy. Her face instantly turned deathly pale. What did you say? I said, Qingju enunciated each word. You venomous enchantress from the western regions. Your 10-year-long scheme should come to an end today. As soon as he finished speaking, countless archers suddenly surged from all sides of the hall, their gleaming arrows all aimed at Yun Yao. Yun Yao's expression changed sharply. She finally realized she had been lured into a trap. Qingju, how dare you? Watch me. Qingju sneered. Men, take her. Several guards stepped forward. A flash of ruthlessness crossed Yun Yao's eyes. She suddenly pulled a dagger from her sleeve and held it to her throat. Who dares come near? I will die right in front of you. I will let the world know that you, Qingju, are a butcher who kills his beloved. The guards hesitated. Qingju frowned. He hadn't expected that even in such a state, she would still use death as a threat. Right then, a childish voice rang from the inner hall. Mother! Everyone saw Qin Yanyao, dressed in silk, rubbing her sleepy eyes as she walked out, still holding that rattle drum. She had just woken up, frightened by the scene before her. She looked timidly at Yun Yao. Mother! Is it really you? I thought I heard your voice just now. Yun Yao froze when she saw her. Her expression shifted rapidly in an instant. Surprise, loathing, murderous intent, eventually merging into a low curse. Her voice was very soft, yet it was exceptionally clear in the silent hall. Useless thing. Qingju's body shook violently as he looked at Yun Yao in disbelief. He had finally heard with his own ears how cold and heartless this woman was. Toward her own flesh and blood. Qin Yanyao heard it too. Her small body swayed, and tears instantly gushed out. Mother! Don't call me mother. I am not your mother. You were merely a pawn I used to control Qingju. A piece that could be discarded at any time. Her words were like the sharpest knives, stabbing ruthlessly into the hearts of Qin Yanyao and Qingju. It also made all the guests present feel a chill throughout their bodies. I slowly stepped out from behind Qingju, looking coldly at Yun Yao. Now, do you want to continue acting? Your Highness, the Holy Maiden of Snowy Realm Yaoqi. As soon as I said this, the hall was in an uproar. Yun Yao's face finally changed completely. She stared fixedly at me. She gritted her teeth, squeezing my name through her teeth. So it's you. You're the one behind all this. I'm not the one behind this. I'm just returning the things you've done. To you, one by one. You thought you did everything perfectly? Although Mama Zhang is dead, the things she left behind are still here. The account books of Jishir Hall. Your secret letters with certain officials in the court. And the letters you wrote to your brother, far away in the western regions. Do you want me to read them to you one by one in public? With every word I said, Yun Yao's face turned whiter. By the time I finished, she looked ghastly, teetering on her feet. She knew she had lost. Lost completely. She suddenly turned to Qingju. Qingju, are you really going to disregard our 10 years of affection? For this woman? Have you forgotten who stayed with you when you were at your lowest? Who blocked that fatal blow for you? It was me. It was me, Yun Yao. She looked at him eagerly. From the moment you decided to use me, our affection vanished into thin air. As for the companionship and kindness you mentioned, what I owed you should have been paid back in these 10 years. From now on, you and I owe each other nothing. He slowly raised his hand and closed his eyes. Fire. Unbelievable despair erupted in Yun Yao's eyes. She let out a piercing scream. At the critical moment, something unexpected happened. The roof of the banquet hall suddenly burst open, and dozens of men in black descended from the sky. Their clothes were embroidered with the totem of the snowy mountain red lotus. Leading them was a tall man wearing a silver mask. He knelt on one knee. Holy Maiden. Your subordinate is late. I deserve 1,000 deaths. Hope instantly ignited in Yun Yao's eyes. Brother. The masked man stood up, his cold gaze scanning the hall. Finally fixing on Qingju. Qingju, if you dare harm my sister, I will make everyone in this governor's manor be buried with her. He gave an order. Attack. The black-clad assassins immediately drew their swords and rushed at the guests and guards. Blood and flesh flew in the hall, turning into a chaotic mess. The masked man lunged straight for Qingju. Qin Che drew his sword to meet him, and they fought in a blur. I pulled the dazed Qin Yanyao and quickly retreated to a corner. Yun Yao was protected by her subordinates. Looking at the carnage before her, a mad smile appeared on her face. She pointed at us and laughed wildly. Qin Ju, Lu Jiyu. Today, all of you will die here. The governor's manor will turn into a sea of fire. And I will step on your corpses. To complete the great cause of restoring Snowy Realm Yaoqi. I looked at her coldly, as if looking at a clown. Is that so? Have you forgotten whose territory this is? As soon as my voice fell, sudden battle cries rang from outside, along with the sound of synchronized footsteps. Countless torches lit up the governor's manor as bright as day. It was the elite forces of the Imperial Guard. They surrounded the entire manor so tightly that not even a drop of water could leak out. Yun Yao's smile froze on her face, and the masked man's attack also slowed down. He looked out the window in disbelief, at the endless line of fire. How is it possible? How could the Imperial Guards? Because a steady and majestic voice came from the door. Everyone looked toward the sound, and saw the current emperor, in a dragon robe, slowly walking and surrounded by guards. This is my decree. By his side followed a small figure. It was Shiheng. Shiheng saw me, and nodded slightly to me. All of this was something Qin Ju and I had planned long ago. Tonight's banquet was not only to lure out Yun Yao, but also to wipe out the remaining forces of Snowy Realm Yaoqi, in one fell swoop. And having the emperor as the final witness was Shiheng's idea. My son had a longer vision than I thought, and was more meticulous. Yun Yao and the masked man fell into complete despair. They knew they couldn't escape today. The emperor looked at them, and said flatly, surrender. I can leave you a whole corpse. The masked man suddenly burst into wild laughter. Before his laughter stopped, he suddenly pulled a black porcelain bottle from his bosom, pulled the stopper, and a pungent sweet fragrance instantly diffused. Not good, it's the desperation powder. Everyone, hold your breath. Qin Che's face changed drastically, but it was already too late. After the black-clad assassins inhaled the fragrance, their bodies suddenly expanded. Their skin turned a strange greenish black. Their reason vanished, leaving only bloodthirsty madness. They lunged at the surrounding guards like wild beasts. The masked man also inhaled the toxic gas, and his body underwent the same terrifying change. He stared at Qin Ju, his eyes filled with the madness of mutual destruction. Qin Ju, let's go to hell together, he roared and rushed over. The masked man had turned into a monster that only knew how to kill. His strength and speed increased several times over. Qin Che was no match at all. Within a few rounds, he was sent flying by a palm strike, spitting blood and falling to the ground. The guards swarmed up, but it was just like throwing eggs against a stone. The masked man had only one target. Qin Ju. Qin Ju stood there motionless. Not a hint of fear on his face. Only a calm expression. He slowly drew the sword from his waist, pointing the blade directly at the rushing monster, seemingly determined to die together. Right then, a white figure suddenly blocked his way. It was Yun Yao. Brother. She spread her arms, protecting Qin Ju with her own frail body. A trace of struggle flashed in the masked man's eyes, but it was soon swallowed by madness. His hand, which had already become a claw, pierced through Yun Yao's body without hesitation. Blood splashed all over Qin Ju's face. Time seemed to freeze in this instant. Yun Yao slowly turned her head, looking at Qin Ju's face, which she had both resented and loved for 10 years. A smile actually floated on the corner of her mouth. That smile was beautiful, and also very desolate. Qin Lang, she whispered, now. We truly owe each other nothing. After saying that, she fell into Qin Ju's arms. Qin Ju subconsciously caught her, his gaze complex to the extreme. After the masked man struck Yun Yao, he also seemed to have exhausted all his energy. The madness within him rapidly faded away. Looking at his own blood-stained hands, 2 lines of bloody tears flowed down his eyes, and he let out a beast-like howl. The guards swarmed forward and pinned him down tightly. The mastermind was caught. The remaining mutated assassins were also quickly cleaned up. A thrilling rebellion finally came to an end. The hall was a mess, with the smell of blood lingering. The emperor walked over to Qin Ju, glanced at the lifeless Yun Yao in his arms, and let out a sigh. Love is all love. Qin Ju didn't respond, just held her quietly, as if he wanted to engrave her into his bones forever. Looking at this scene, there was no ripple in my heart. Yun Yao was dead, killed by the brother she loved most, and in the arms of the man she loved most. This was perhaps the best ending, and also the most cruel punishment. I walked to Shiheng's side, knelt down, and gently covered his eyes. Don't look, it's over. Shiheng didn't move, only buried his small face deep in my chest, his body trembling slightly. I knew he was afraid. No matter how clever and precocious, he was still just a 7-year-old child. I hugged him tightly, as if to transfer all my warmth to him. The remnants of Snowy Realm Yaoqi were rooted out. The masked man was thrown into the dungeon, awaiting execution on a scheduled date. Yun Yao was hastily buried by Qin Ju as an adoptive sister. No status, no epitaph. as if she had never appeared. The governor's manor returned to peace. The emperor kept his promise, issuing a royal decree to announce to the world, clearing all the injustices for me and the Lu family. The decree said that I didn't run away back then, but had received a secret order to investigate Snowy Realm Miaoqi in Jiangnan. I had endured humiliation for 7 years, served the country with loyalty, and now that the mission was accomplished, my status as the governor's wife was restored. I knew this was just for the outsiders to hear, to preserve the royal dignity, and also save Qin Ju's life. I didn't care. All I wanted was innocence. And now I had it. Afterward, Qin Ju came to find me, standing before me, hesitant to speak. Jiu. I set down the decree. Governor Qin, now, you can fulfill your second promise. He was stunned. What promise? I looked at him, and calmly uttered these 4 words, a letter of divorce. Qin Ju's face turned deathly pale. He looked at me in disbelief. You still want to leave? Yes. Why? He took a step forward and grabbed my hand. I've already cleared your name. Shiheng has also returned to your side. The 3 of us can start over. Why won't you forgive me? I felt like I was hearing the biggest joke. Forgive? Qin Ju. What do you want me to forgive you for? Forgive you for judging me unfaithful without knowing the truth? Forgive you for making me bear an infamous reputation for 7 years? Or forgive you for making my son live in my shadow for 7 years? He was speechless, retreating step by step. Qin Ju. A broken mirror cannot be mended. Let go. It's good for you, for me, and for Shiheng. I pulled back my hand, didn't look at him again, and turned inside, leaving him alone and dejected in the courtyard. The next day, a letter of divorce, stamped with the seal of the governor's manor, was delivered to me. I picked up the brush and signed my name at the bottom. This time, it was truly over. I took Shiheng and left the capital openly. Qin Ju didn't come to see us off. Only Qin Che led a group of men to escort us out of the city. Upon parting, Qin Che handed over a heavy wooden box. Madam, this is from the general for you and the young master. He said he owes you too much over these years. And this is just a bit of compensation. I opened it to find thick stacks of banknotes and land deeds, almost equivalent to half of the governor's estate. I didn't refuse. This is what Shiheng and I deserve. Tell him for me. From now on, we part ways, each to their own happiness. I lowered the carriage curtain, cutting off the city behind me, that held all my love and hatred. The carriage slowly started moving, heading toward the warm sunlight of the south. Shiheng leaned in my arms and asked softly, Mother, are we coming back in the future? I stroked his head. We're not coming back. Then, what about Father? He has his life, and we have our peace. Remember, your life belongs only to yourself. Don't be bound by anyone or anything. Live the life you want to live. He nodded half understandingly, burying his small face deeper into my chest. I held him, watching the landscape fly past the window, with a peace in my heart I had never felt before. Later, I heard that after I left, Qin Ju sent Qin Yao to a nunnery. He told the public that her worldly ties were severed, and the ancient temple was her best place. I knew he was protecting her, and also allowing himself to let go completely. He never remarried for the rest of his life, nor did he have any other children. He devoted all his energy to the country and the world, becoming a solitary official whose name would go down in history. I, on the other hand, rooted myself in Yangzhou. My business grew bigger and bigger, and I became the leading female merchant in Jiangnan. Shiheng also grew up. He didn't join the military like his father. Instead, he became a doctor who saved lives. He traveled across the mountains and rivers of the Great Zhou, saving countless lives. His life was ordinary yet free. We all found our own new lives. One sunny afternoon, I was sitting in the courtyard basking in the sun. Xiaoji brought over a plate of freshly cut watermelon, and handed over a letter. Miss, another letter from the capital. Read it. She said it was sent by Lord Qin Che's men. The letter said Governor Qin passed away last month. Before he died, he kept murmuring my name. It also said the remaining half of the governor's estate was left to the young master, and asked when the young master would return to inherit it. I was silent for a long time, then said softly, Write back. Say we've received the sentiment, but we don't want the things. Let it be used to accumulate some merit for him. As for Shiheng, he won't be going back. His life is in Jiangnan, not the capital. After saying that, I took a bite of watermelon. It was very sweet, just like my life now. Time flows especially fast in the misty rain of Jiangnan. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. Shiheng had grown into a tall and handsome young man. His medical skills became more refined, and his reputation as a divine doctor spread throughout Jiangnan. He opened a small clinic, called Onkong Hall. He often treated the poor for free. He said a doctor's heart is benevolent, and saving lives is the foundation. Looking at him like this, I was full of pride. He wasn't blinded by hatred, nor was his mind clouded by power. He became exactly what I hoped for. I was also getting old. Fine lines appeared at the corners of my eyes, and silver strands mixed into my hair, but I lived very comfortably. The business was managed by capable people. Usually, I would garden, or help out at Sherhang's clinic. Life was plain and peaceful. I thought my life would reach its end in this calm manner. Until that day. A special patient came to the clinic. It was a woman in her 30s, wearing faded cloth clothes. Her hair was tied up casually with a wooden pin, and her face bore the hardships of the world. But one could still see traces of her youthful beauty. She didn't come for medical treatment. She came to apply for a job as a servant. She said her husband died, and she had a child to support, having no other way out. As long as she had food to eat, she was willing to do any dirty or heavy work. Seeing her in such a pitiful state, Sherhang let her stay, and let her do chores like chopping wood and laundry in the backyard. I first saw her by the well in the backyard. She was struggling to pull up water. Seeing me, she let go in fear, and the bucket fell to the ground, splashing water all over her. She hurriedly lowered her head, not daring to look at me, her voice full of panic. "Madam." I looked at her, and she seemed familiar, but I couldn't remember where I had seen her. "What is your name?" "My name is Ain Yen." My heart skipped a beat. I carefully examined the contours of her face. Though the luster had been worn away by time, the charm deep in her bones remained. It was Qin Yao, the once noble eldest miss of the governor's manor. How could she have fallen to such a state? Waves of shock surged in my heart, but I remained calm on the surface. "Look up." She hesitated for a while, before slowly raising her face. The moment our eyes met, her whole body trembled violently. Her eyes filled with unbelievable terror. Is it you? Lu. Madam Lu." She fell to the ground with a thud, kowtowing repeatedly. "Madam, please spare my life. I didn't come here on purpose. I really didn't know this was your property. I just wanted to find a job to support my child. Please, don't drive me away." She wept bitterly, looking pathetic. There wasn't a trace of the noble miss from back then. I felt a mixture of emotions. I went forward and helped her up. "Get up. I won't drive you away." She looked up with tearful eyes, unable to believe it. I asked her to answer me, asking what she had been through all these years. She told me haltingly that back then, Qin Ju didn't actually send her to a nunnery. He only said that to the outside world. He gave her a large sum of money, and told her to stay away from the capital, to start over in a place where no one knew her. He said she didn't owe anyone, and her life should be her own to decide. She took the money and went south, and once thought about living a good life. But she had been pampered since childhood. She didn't understand the cruelty of the world at all. Soon, all her money was swindled away. She ended up on the streets, begging and doing domestic work. She had done everything, and even almost got sold into a brothel. Later, she married an honest peddler, and gave birth to a son. She thought her life would continue peacefully like this. But 3 years ago, her husband encountered bandits on his way to sell goods, and passed away. As a widow with a child, life became even harder. Until they ended up in Yangzhou, and heard of Kong Hall's reputation for benevolence. So she thought she'd try her luck, not expecting to run into me. After listening to her story, I was silent for a long time. Fate truly plays tricks on people. Two people once as different as clouds and mud, actually met again in this way. "Where is your child?" Her eyes turned red again. "He's sick with a high fever. That won't go down." I had no money for his treatment, so I thought of coming here to earn some coins. I sighed softly. "Bring him here. Let Sherhang take a look at him." She froze and looked at me in disbelief. "The child is innocent," I said. "The grievances between adults shouldn't involve children." She could no longer hold back, collapsing on the ground and wailing loudly. She brought the child. It was a boy of 5 or 6, with a sturdy build, and a very cute appearance. Only his face was flushed from the fever, and he was listless. Sherhang carefully checked his pulse, and wrote a prescription, saying it was just a cold combined with malnutrition. A few doses of medicine and good care would make him fine. Qin Yao thanked us profusely. I arranged for the mother and son to stay in the backyard of the clinic for now, saying we would decide once the child recovered. After the child settled in, Sherhang went personally every day to check his pulse and give him medicine. Between the two children who had both lost their fathers, there seemed to be a natural closeness. The little boy liked Sherhang very much, always following him and calling him brother. Sherhang's expression remained calm, but his eyes had a soft light I had never seen before. Watching this scene, Qin Yao's eyes were always wet. "Madam, thank you. Thank you for not holding a grudge. It's all in the past. One must always look forward." After the child recovered, Qin Yao proactively suggested leaving, saying she didn't want to trouble me anymore. I didn't make her stay, but I gave her a sum of money, and provided her with a small shop, letting her run a small business. "This is not for you." It's for the child. I hope he can grow up well. Study hard. And not follow your mother's old path. She knelt on the ground and kowtowed to me 3 times. And then left with the child. I watched her retreating figure. And a voice in my heart said softly. It was as if a grudge that had been tangled for half a lifetime had finally come to an end at this moment. Life returned to tranquility. In the blink of an eye, it was another spring. The peach blossoms in Jiangnan were in full bloom, and the city was filled with pink clouds. Shiheng suddenly said to me, Mother, I want to go to the capital to see. I was stunned. Go to the capital? To do what? Nothing much. Just some old friends and places. I want to visit. I knew who he was talking about. Although, we tacitly agreed not to mention that man again. I knew Shiheng still couldn't let it go in his heart. That was his father, after all. Okay, Mother will go with you. We set out on the road north again. This time, our mood was completely different from before. No hatred, no hiding. Only a sense of calm and release. The capital was the same as always. Bustling and prosperous. The plaque of the governor's manor was covered in a thin layer of dust. We didn't go in. We only stood at the door for a moment. And then went to the royal cemetery in the suburbs. Qingju was buried there. His tomb was very grand. And the tombstone was carved with the achievements of his life. Shiheng stood before the tomb for a long time. He didn't cry or speak. Just quietly gazed at the cold stone tablet. As if he wanted to see through it. Finally, he took a small wooden bird out of his chest. The one he sent at Qin Yao's birthday banquet back then, which was returned and he had always kept with him. He placed the wooden bird gently in front of the stone. He whispered, I've come to see you. I'm doing very well. Mother is also very well. Rest easy. After saying that, he bowed deeply to the tombstone 3 times. Then turned to hold my hand. Mother, let's go home. The setting sun stretched our shadows very long. I knew from this moment on. Shiheng had truly let go. And had completely grown up. We stayed in the capital for a few more days. Shiheng visited several old imperial physicians to discuss medicine. While I went to see Qin Che. He was also old. He had married and had children. He was no longer the cold hidden guard commander, but a middle-aged man who had put on some weight. He was very excited to see me. We talked a lot. About our experiences over the years. And also about some old stories of Qingju. He told me that before Qingju died, he was holding a painting tightly in his hand. It was a painting of me sitting by the window watching the snow. He said the happiest time of Qingju's life was the 3 years he was married to me. Although he never said it. He had already regarded me as his wife in his heart. He was just blinded by hatred and guilt. By the time he woke up, it was all too late. Qin Che also handed me a letter. It was a suicide note Qingju left for Shiheng. There were not many words in the letter. Only a few lines. Shiheng, my son, as if we are meeting through these words. Your father's life was spent on the battlefield, and I owe much. Do not miss me, do not hate me. May you be safe and happy in this life. In the evening, I gave the letter to Shiheng. He read it over and over again. And finally, carefully, folded the letter and put it in his chest. The candlelight on the wall flickered slightly. He turned his head and said softly, Mother, let's go home. Okay, let's go home. We left the capital. Left this city. That held too much of our joys and sorrows. And returned to our gentle Jiangnan. Life continued to flow peacefully. But clearly some things had quietly changed. There were more and more smiles on Shiheng's face. He was no longer that cold boy, but a refined young man. He began to consider his marriage. The girl was a daughter of a scholarly family in the city. Gentle and elegant. They were a good match. I was very gratified to see this. Their wedding was very simple. With no extravagant display. Only some close relatives and friends were invited. On the big day, Shiheng came to serve me tea in a bright red wedding suit. He knelt before me. His eyes reddened. Mother, your son is married. From now on, someone will be with me. To take care of you together. You won't be lonely anymore. I smiled and helped him up. But tears couldn't stop falling. Silly child, mother having you is enough. Treat her well in the future. The girl knew. Mother. Looking at my high-spirited son before me, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. It seemed like only yesterday, he was still the infant in my arms. In the blink of an eye, he had become a grown man. Married and with his own home. I can finally grow old in peace. After the wedding banquet dispersed, I sat alone in the small courtyard, watching the brilliant sunset. In my hand was Qingju's yellowed suicide note. The evening breeze blew, making the paper rustle. I seemed to see that young general in armor, full of high spirits, and saw that governor, struggling in pain in the study. I also saw the man lying quietly under the tomb, sleeping in silence. We were entangled for too long in this life, and we missed too much. I, Lu Jiyu, have loved, hated, and fought in this life, and finally obtained the freedom and new life I wanted. I have no regrets. I held the paper to the candle flame, watching it turn to ash bit by bit. like the past that faded with the wind. From now on, there is no more Lu Jiu, the governor's wife, only the Jiangnan merchant and he, and a filial son named Shiheng.